In this video, I'm going to be comparing washes for terrain, the one that you can pretty much use for free versus the one using all the fancier items, and we'll just compare them and see what comes out at the end. There's many companies that make great paint washes, such as like Ivy Painter and Games Workshop. Basically, you put these washes onto your miniatures, and it pools in the like crevices, and it basically creates like a subtle low light and even sort of highlights depending on the consistency of the wash. Now, nuln oil is basically affectionately referred to as liquid skill for good reason. They're very effective and very easy to use. However, you shouldn't really use these for terrain because it's not cost effective. The reason I'm making the video is because whilst the nicer wash isn't that expensive, I just think that once you start getting into the hobby and you start getting tempted to pick up all these little bits here and there, things start gradually adding up. And you might watch people on YouTube and feel a little bit of pressure to sort of join in, and really there might not be any need depending on what you're trying to achieve. For this video, I'm going to be aiming for a nuln oil kind of covering and consistency, but your ratios here might vary depending on what you're using. I'm not here to give exact recipes in this video. Right then, the free version of the wash, well, this is pretty simple. I'm sure we're all very familiar with this at this point. It is literally black paint and water. You can add in a little bit of optional dish detergent if you want. This is the thing that you use to clean your dishes. Here I'm using a drop of very liquid. So in the bottle I get a little bit of tap water and a little bit of black paint. I literally just get it on a brush and dip it in and spin it around. I generally don't actually use dish detergent when I do water and paint, but for this example I thought I would because I was like, that's what everybody recommends. It's up to you if you add it or not. It will basically improve the flow of your wash. I actually don't normally make my washes in bulk like this when I'm using this method, and for two main reasons. The tap water isn't pure, so that can cause a little bit of issues with your wash, and it can maybe like go off basically. And also I was noticing that when I made this larger quantity, basically the paint separated from the water. Not the end of the world, you can just shake it back, but I just rather make it as I go rather than pre-batch it. And that's it for that one, so we'll do the comparisons at the end. So for the fancier version, what I'm going to be using here is some deionized water. It was maybe about £2 a bottle, but the next best if you can't find that would be to use distilled. You basically just want water that's pure so that it doesn't cause issues down the line. And deionized water basically is water without the impurities, so that's fine there. Then I'm going to be using some matte medium. Now you can use gloss, but keep in mind it will be shinier and you'll probably then have to paint on top of it to, you know, make sure you dull it down. I'm using this store-bought proper matte medium artist stuff, but there are actually a couple of alternatives you can get. I think like Pledge Floor Wax and some like Von Seal thing that I'm not 100% sure of what it is. I'll try and leave links in the description. Then I'm going to add in my black ink. I'm using this carbon black because it's pretty much all I could find. I'm going to add maybe like 10 drops at a time until I start getting the colour and the consistency that I like. Just keep checking it as you go and you'll eventually find something you like. And then I'm actually going to add in 1 drop of this little bottle of flow aid that I've bought. Now normally I would actually use dish soap here, but I wanted to be a little bit fancy and use this flow aid for this video, and it may have worked a little bit too well. My wash became very runny with this flow aid. It was too good of a job, so I'd probably actually stick to the dish detergent unless you do a proper test beforehand. Then as you're going, just keep testing for and modifying your results. If your paint isn't strong enough in terms of colour, add more ink. If it's too runny, probably add some more matte medium. As I said, I'm not exactly doing quantities here or recipes exactly because it's not that hard to just wing it as you go and try and find a consistency that you like. Let's test them out. I've got 4 examples here. They were either a 3D print like fail or a practice, or I'm doing some simple basing. So let's start with the Mando. You'll notice one of the Mandos actually have no arm, and the other ones all have the gun on the back that broke. That's just me messing about with the 3D printer, don't stress there. And as you can see on the screen, A, B and C, can you really tell which is which just by the wash? Now I'll tell you the answer, I'm not going to keep you on tenterhooks too long. A is the paint and water mix, the simple free version of it. B is the fancier wash, and C is the nuln oil. Now, when I was applying these, I just caked it on the miniature, I just whacked it on I didn't like mess about with the recesses. I just let it pool. These, as I said, are just test prints. So none of these are actually perfect. And I would, normally not recommend using a homemade wash on miniatures either. You can do if you're braver than I am, but yeah, I'm not brave enough to do something like that. Then I've got these little sci-fi crates. On the warped crate here, I use nuln oil, and then on the one you see on the screen at the minute, I use the expensive wash, and on this other one here, I use the free wash. Is there that big of a difference between the three here? No, there's not that big of a difference. I think on the black paint and just water wash, I think perhaps I didn't do enough black paint, so it's perhaps a little bit weaker, but it's not really that noticeable. And to be fair, it's a pretty similar story for the bases. Generally, I would normally use a brown wash rather than black wash for these bases, but I've painted two bases, grey and brown, and I did the black wash on all of them. And quite frankly, they all look very, very, very similar. But yeah, for me, the key thing here is that the free wash is actually more than fine. And I just want to say, don't feel pressured to like keep up with the Joneses. I think that's the actual phrase. Because the free wash is more than adequate. Yes, if you've got the money, fair enough, buy the fancy stuff, make your bulk washes, it's completely fine. But don't feel like pressured to do it, because you might do this, then you might want a static grass applicator, you might want a hot wire cutter, etc. There's all these kind of extra things that you might want at some point, and you might just feel pressured to get them all now. Whereas really making terrain, you don't need it, and I think that's the vibe of this video. I completely understand the fancy wash is better, there's no doubt about it, I think, right, but it's just not that big of a difference. But just don't feel pressured to have to do it. Take your time, especially if you don't have a lot of like disposable income. Don't feel like you have to do it, basically. Anyway, thank you to my Patreon. It's actually this side, I think it is. Much love to you guys. Like and subscribe. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.